Let's talk about parenting because this has come up a few times. And I mean, I need to be clear, I am no parenting expert. It's not really the field of marriage and relationships that I delve into too often. But what keeps coming up in my conversations with you and my clients is how do you handle parenting styles that are different, or different parenting styles is probably the best way to say it. And what I tend to do is go back to my own marriage because we had different parenting styles. And at some point, this was causing real issues in our marriage, and it did cause some levels of conflict. We've been able to rectify it, and we did find our rhythm with parenting, but it did take some conversations, right, and a bit of conflict. So I'm going to talk to you about that from my perspective, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that we use to help us find a nice balance between our different parenting styles. So my name's Daisy Chiwako. I am a marriage and relationship coach. I work with couples and individuals all around the world, and I show up here on YouTube hoping to give you great tips and advice on how you can have an amazing, thriving, flourishing, beautiful, exciting marriage, because I know that that is what's available to you and to all of us. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and hit the notification button so that you can stay up to date with everything that I'm sharing. Also, do feel free to use the comment section if there's anything that you want to also input or ask me, particularly in this subject, because like I said before, I'm no parenting expert. All I want to do is share with you my experience, or mine and my husband's experience. So I'm a mother of three boys. We are parents of three boys who are now all teenagers. Crazy. My youngest is 13, and then I've got a 14-year-old, and I've got an 18-year-old who's about to fly the nest. Like, it's all going on right now. But obviously, when we first started out this whole parenting thing, we were learning as we went along, and we discovered that we both had very different approaches to what we thought was good parenting. And I think that that's the first thing that I had to get my head around. I think that naturally, as a mother, I felt like I knew best. And I'm going to put this out there. I do find that as I speak to women, we do have this kind of idea that when it comes to parenting, we know best. And we definitely can communicate that to to our partners, maybe not with the words that we speak, but how we operate, how we deal with our children, the way we sort of jump in real quick, and how defensive we can get when it comes to our partner's approach to parenting. And so I really had to understand that my husband loved and loves our children just as much as I do, right? I don't have the upper hand of loving our kids. I don't love them more than he does. Like, there's no competition when it comes to who loves our kids. And I think that was an important backdrop to have, an important aha moment. Like, this guy does love our children, because there were times when his approach was so different to mine that I would almost feel like, maybe he doesn't care about them or love them in the way that I do. And that's why he's choosing that approach. The other thing that really occurred to me after some time is that literally the fact that we come from different homes, different upbringings, we come from different cultures. We are different genders, the male and the female. We are naturally going to approach parenting differently. It doesn't mean that there's a problem in our marriage, or we're not united, or there's something wrong with either one of us. It literally is. We come from different backgrounds. We have different experiences with parenting. And on top of that, we are different sexes. And just from him being a male and me being a female, we're going to have a different approach. And that's okay. Right? And so I did find that Mr. C's approach was completely different from mine. I remember, him being very sort of firm with the children from quite a young age. And I would say to him, why do you feel like you have to be so firm with them? Me being the more nurture, gently approach, really more hugs and kisses, and still feeling that in my own way I was being firm, but his was a lot more firm. And, he would say things to me like, I'm teaching them how to be men. And I'm like, they're about 3 years old. They're barely boys at this point. But as the years have gone by, and I've heard him say that to me a few times, I'm teaching them how to be men. I've realized that there's actually certain lessons that I'm not able to teach these boys. And that if they had both parents approaching parenting from my perspective and in my style, actually, I wouldn't have the great young men that I have now. Like that balance, that difference is so necessary. And I think, and I'm not saying that sort of all females are going to have the softly approach, the more maybe emotional approach, connecting with them emotionally and all of that. But I am saying that there is definitely a need for the two elements. Like we can't go all the way heavy handed and we can't go all the way softly. And actually, that's a benefit. There's an opportunity there in having the two different approaches, because the child is going to get that balanced style, the balanced discipline, the balanced love, the balanced approach that's going to allow them to grow in a balanced way, right? And it took me a while to really realize that actually his approach isn't the wrong approach, it's just a different approach, and beyond that, it's a necessary approach, so necessary. And I realized that actually I didn't have his style, right? I didn't have it. And it was a blessing that he did. And I presume that on the flip side, he also began to honor the element that I bring in, where I am able to connect with them and understand them on an emotional level. And so, really, there's no right or wrong. There's just two different approaches. But those two different approaches can coexist when we appreciate them and use them in the right times for the right things. So, Mr. C might, be really hard and heavy with them because he really wants this discipline and he wants to make sure these boys are growing with respect and honor and integrity. And he's teaching them these things. And then, when the time is right, I can then go in with the hugs and the kisses and the more emotional aspects of it. So they're also getting that as well. And so now I'm really grateful for the two elements. And actually, they don't have to compete. But I think one thing that's really important and has been really important is being able to talk this through as we're going along, like seeing the differences, trying to understand each other's approach and talking through. Because there's some things that I do things that Mr. Chuako might be like, listen, I don't really agree with how you're dealing with this, and vice versa. And so we've had to come to that place where it's okay to communicate and talk about it and see where, what is our thought process behind this approach. And then again, going back to trusting and knowing that both of us love our children equally, just the same, that he is never going to do anything or make a decision about something that is going to harm our children, and he has to believe that that's the truth for me. Like really understanding each other's intentions and our mutual intention, whichever route we decide to go down, our mutual intention is that our kids win, right? And they are stable, they are healthy, right? They get the best start in life as possible, and we give them the skills and the tools to allow them to go off and have amazing lives. Like, we have that joint intention. It's just a different way of going about it. But like I said before, both ways are valid, both ways are needed, especially if both approaches are allowed to be exhibited, and then you get that balance in the parenting. One thing that Mr. Chiwako did often pick me up on, and I really had to learn to stop doing this, was stepping into the situation when he was disciplining the children, right? When he was correcting the children. And I guess it was a bit of mother bear, where I'm feeling like you're being a bit too heavy with them, or, I just want to sort of almost step in and protect them. And I'm, I didn't know I was going to be this much of a softie, but I really am. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing like abuse going on. It was raised voices or a firm tone. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I really don't even want them to hear that. I know, I need to do better. But I would step in and I'd protect them, and I'd say things like, oh, no, he didn't mean it that way. Or, oh, no, Jude was just trying to, like, I'm speaking for them and what have you. And those sort of things really do undermine, right, your partner. And it almost sets up a us against him or us against you situation, where it's like me and my kids against you. And you really don't want that dynamic in your marriage. If anything, it needs to be mummy and daddy, not against anyone, but we stand as a unit, right? Particularly in front of the children. It gives a message of solidarity, of stability. It really gives a great example of what a good, healthy marriage looks like. And it also fosters respect, right, for both parents. And I recognize that I did not do that so well initially. And even worse was when I would correct him or say, I don't like how you handled this in front of the children. Now, I will admit, I only did that a couple of times in the early days and learned real quick that that's an absolute no. And so I learned to wait. And when we were alone, when the dust has settled or whatever, I would just talk to him about it and say, this is probably not going to be the best way to handle this particular child, but it's going to work for that child. And this is where actually having the differences in approach, having that male female thing, I have a lot of intuition. I can really get to understand how the kids work quicker than he was able to. And so I was able to point out and say, hey, for this child, the approach that you're using is going to cause this disconnect. And I remember particularly having that conversation with him, particularly around my middle child, who's a lot more sensitive than my eldest and the youngest. And I was like, you're not going to be able to use a blanket approach with all of them. And my husband actually did hear me and change his approach with the middle child, and their bond just flourished from that point. And I think that that's really important when, like I said before, when you can start to see the differences, the strengths in each other's approaches, and utilize them to benefit you, right? And so obviously I've had to learn to be a lot more firm, with the children, and I've had to pick up from Mr. Chiwako the importance of that and why that works, and when actually my softly approach is not going to get me the results that I want. So, you've got to be able to respect and honor your partner's parenting style, understand the style, know that it's always coming from a backdrop of love, learn from their style as well. And if there's any adjustments that you think that they could benefit from, then you want to talk to them about it, but you want to talk to them about it away from the kids, in a private place, when the dust has settled, and it's a good time to have those conversations. But I think the main thing that I want you to know from this video is that you don't have to have the same parenting style. And in fact, I do believe that there is a greater benefit in having the two different styles. particularly if both are allowed to flourish and be used, and you guys find your rhythm in when and how they can be used and really work together on it. And I'm going to say what I said at the beginning. You got to drop the idea, particularly as women, that we have the upper hand when it comes to parenting. We have this greater knowledge and understanding, or that we love our children more. We may be more nurturing, but that is only one aspect of being a great parent, and it's not necessarily the most important. There's lots of other aspects, but I think because nurture comes more natural to us, it's the one that feels more loving or appears to be more loving. We think that our style is the best. Not necessarily at all. Like I said, as a mother of three boys, I am so grateful for my husband's approach, and really only seeing them now turn into young men can I understand the importance of having that different approach, the more masculine approach. That might just lead me on to saying one thing to single parents, and know that it's not always possible. But where it is possible, if you could not only have but allow a male influence to, if you've got boys, allow a male influence in to give that masculine balance. Like, I cannot express to you how important this is. And you may be doing a great job, but you're never going to be able to teach a man how to be a man, right? And there's lessons that only a man is going to be able to teach them, and there's an approach and a way that a man deals with a young boy or a young man that is going to be so much more impactful. So that's just a side note on that for the single mothers of boys. I hope that has been helpful from my experience, but like I said, in this area I'm definitely a student as well. So I would love it if you could use the comment section to drop any hints and tips around your parenting styles, or how you navigated having two parenting styles. And if you do have any questions and I can answer them, I'd be more than happy to do so. In the meantime, I will see you in the next video.